Welcome everyone to session 4. That means it's including the introduction and lesson number 3. So ready, get set, go, grow, and glow. This is really a good motto for us because what we want to do is we want to get serious about what God wants in our life and for us, and what he's doing in us, and what's he want to do through us. So this is, again, as I mentioned before, the parable of the talents. So let's go. Let's grow, not by chance. Remember, don't take everything by chance or random happenings in our life. Let everything just happen. When God made a vineyard, he trimmed the vineyard. He planted the vineyard. He was very deliberate and specific about growth. It wasn't just random. He took care of it to see that it reached its, what would you call it, full potential. So when we grow, then our end result is we want to glow. We want the light of the noble pursuits of God and his kingdom to shine through us. And it's not, as I said before, it's not a me, me, me. These lessons are not for me, me, me. They're only for me so that you have something to give, something to bless with, something to be to encourage others with, a testimony, you could call it, an eyewitness account of how your life has changed. And so, as I've always said in this, I am one that needs this. I need to make a new, I call it a reboot. So this is what I'm doing. And so this is mostly for me, and if ever we could go on this journey together, welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome. All right, so our law. Remember, we have different laws. So there's the law of intentionality. That means doing something on purpose. It means taking action, not just thinking about it. So we have laws. Now remember about the laws. There's natural laws. What are the ones that we talked about? Law of gravity, law of, what did we say? Kinetic energy, movement, law of aerodynamics, so an airplane could fly. But none of you thought of any more laws, and you didn't write them down in the comments. Come on, you've got to get with the program. So think of these laws that are in the natural, and it gives us a picture that there are not only natural laws, but spiritual laws that govern life, teach us. They're natural. They're natural laws. They're actually naturally supernatural and supernaturally natural. That was a saying that I grew up with. And that has stuck with me for a longest time. And some of you that are more super spiritual, you want more theological language and more everything about Jesus, and that's wonderful. But at the same time, we've got to speak in normal, everyday language to so many people that aren't familiar with that kind of terminology, that kind of approach. So we're using natural. We want to be naturally supernatural and supernaturally natural. So let's go. So law of the mirror is today. So what do you think that has to do with? How we see ourselves. And it's so important because how we see ourselves determines how we will invest in ourselves. And now remember, To invest is biblical. It's called faith. It means you put something in, right? And you don't see the result yet, but you believe for. You somehow, by the eyes of faith, see a result. It's an investment. And this is what Abraham did. He called the things that were not, remember, as though they were. So this is what we're learning. We want to understand that how we see ourselves determines how we invest in ourselves. And to invest is biblical. It's called faith. So now we get to the question for all of us. How do we see ourselves? And this world many times has got us thinking in the wrong way, all right? Thinking in a way that is not edifying, it's not building up, it's not encouraging, it's not cheering you on or to climb higher. It's a law that we need to understand realistically. Of course, we need to be aware, as we talked about in our last law of awareness. We realistically need to be aware both of our shortcomings, and that's what we mostly focus and concentrate on. But we can't do that. We can't just stay there. We have to balance it, not go to one extreme or the other. We must understand realistically our shortcomings, what we need, areas we need help in, we need work in, and we also must swing back, and we must also identify and be aware of the areas that God has given us gifts, talents, abilities. We must be aware of those. And so in life, what do? We find this golden, I call it the golden balance. I think someone else called it the golden mean, the very center. Sometimes I call it the very center of God's will, like on a potter's wheel. If you aren't in the very center, if you're to one extreme, one side, or the other side, you go from one to the other. But if you aren't in the very center and you've got a clay, you're working to make a pot, a jar, what's going to happen when you're off center? It is going to wobble, 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 wobble. It's not going to be straight. You aren't going to be able to make it. So on a potter's wheel, you must find the very exact center, the golden center, the golden mean, and have realistic and have strengths, understanding of our strengths, our talents, and abilities also. So now that we've got that balanced, how do you see yourself? How do you think, as we go to the other side, how do you think God sees you? You know, in the stories in the Bible, God left the 99 to go and chase after the one who got lost. And if he loves that one little sheep so much to leave everything else behind and go after the one that was lost, as you could say from your heart, how much more does he care for us and supply and will supply every need every day? So how do you think God sees us? We've got to begin to understand that, because, you know, a picture of reality is that reality is not our muddled thinking that brings us down, that condemns us all the time. But our thinking must be transformed by the renewing of our minds. And that's what we're doing now. That's what we're talking about. when we talk about this, when we share with one another, when we write down in the comments, you're actually interacting. And as you interact, there's a story also in the Bible. I think it's from Jeremiah 33:11. Can't remember. It's about this tribe in the Bible named Moab. And Moab rested on its lees, Lees. That means it just kind of was taking it easy. And the picture is that, and did not pour itself. This is a strange little script verse, but it says that Moab did not pour itself from vessel to vessel. So what is it talking about? Everyone wants to get clear, right? We all want to get clear, and our understanding to be clear, our life to be clear, everything to be clear. Sometimes you call it purified, clear. So how do you purify? This is our question, all of us. Our question, how do we do this? Okay, great. Yes, we all want to get clear. We all want to be purer and clear and cleaner. We all want to do that, but how do you do it? And this story is a story of how you pour during the making of wine. They all had those big jars, those big pots when they made wine in biblical days. And what they had to do to purify was to pour the wine as it was in the big pot, to kind of pick up that big pot and pour it into a new empty pot. And as you're pouring, you see the liquid from making of wine. And then all of a sudden it starts to get dirty. And when you see what's called the dregs, they're called the dregs. When you see what's called the dregs, you stop. You stop pouring, because all that's left in that one big jar is the dregs, the sediment, which you don't want, because your goal is to purify, to make pure the wine. So what do you do next? So the new pot where you just poured into sits for some length of time. And as it sits, it begins the sediment goes down to the bottom. And what do? You pour again. So you pick up the jar and you have a brand new jar, and you start pouring the wine in, and you're pouring, and then you see the dregs and you stop. And you leave the old dregs in the old jar. But the new jar is more purified than the previous jars. So you get the picture. The picture is we've got to interact. We've got to take action. We've got to not just let it sit there, but as we pour from vessel to vessel, we won't be on our sitting back hoping something will change. So this interaction process, this taking, like Peter stepping out of the boat. Just step out. That's what I do. I told you before. I just press the button and say, Lord, help me. All right. So what were we talking about? God's image, seeing God's image. Often our lives are like stories that we're living out, and stories that others read, right? It's like epistles in the scriptural words. Epistles, little letters. That's what the epistles are. They're little letters. And this picture, it's like epistles, walking about, walking to and fro. Epistles are walking to and fro, and they are, as the scripture says, learned and read by all people. We are like little letters to the world. Our life is like little letters to the world. And the scripture says, people learned by our lives, and learned and read by all people. So it's just an example of how we can encourage, we can help, we can, as we interact, as we step out, and as we see for our own lives how to make them clearer and better, it can be a blessing to other people. And this is the goal, to be a blessing. So if you don't see yourself now in a positive image in your own story, then why don't you? Because you don't have a high enough faith or a proper idea of your life from God's perspective. Okay, that's what we want to see from God's perspective. We want to understand that. And God's view of our life, he sees, someone told me before, he sees what we are becoming, not what we are now. Thank you. Thank you, Lord. Not what we are now, but he sees what we are becoming. That's his view. Didn't Jesus go to the cross in Hebrews and say, who for the joy that was set before him, and we are that joy. He saw us becoming filled with life. What does it say? The glory of God is man fully alive, fully displaying, showing, manifesting, radiating the light and love of God. So if you don't see yourself in a positive image, how do we get that faith, that proper idea? We understand, first of all, that God has an idea of us as to what we will become. All right, with God's help, we can determine what course our life will take. Okay, what does that mean? It means from Psalms 37, trust in the Lord and commit your way to him, and he will, many times this verse is translated or understood in a different way. He will give you the desires of your heart. That means all these things and dreams and crazy things that we have, that we've thought in our heart, God will give you. What if it means that God will give you? That means he will give you desires in your heart, and those desires become like little hints and direction signs as to the way he wants you to go and what he wants you to do. They're little signs. He puts those desires in our. Sometimes we wonder, why do I have that desire in my heart? Did I think of that when I was when I was 20 something years old? Why did I want to do that? And then what happens? Everyone tells this story. If you didn't do what you were dreaming about, what was in your heart when you're 20 years old, and you wake up when you're 40, 50, 60 years old, 70 years old, you wake up and say, why didn't I do it? And you're filled with regret. All right. So trust in the Lord, commit your way to him, and he will put some new, fresh desires in your heart as road signs, as signposts, as hints as to which way to go. Then you can decide which of those desires, which of those dreams you will devote yourself to. and what impact you will make. That means impact for others and what legacy you will leave. So it's never too late. Remember, always remember that. It's never too late, no matter. I mean, all the stories about when someone's 80 years old and they go back to university to get their degree in law or medicine or something else. It's just amazing. It's never too late. All right. So what are we talking about? The law of the mirror. The law of the mirror then is a perfect way to accept and embrace the truth that you are valuable. You are worthy of investment. That your life story and your example, your leadership lives or dies on the investments that you make in yourself. The investments you make in yourself. Now remember Abraham. Why was he blessed? What was the whole purpose? This is not for you, or me. He was blessed to be a blessing. And that should be the motto, the testimony of our lives. You are blessed. You have been given certain qualities, certain things, certain resources, and you are blessed, the reason, so that you can be a blessing to others. Don't be like the last person that Jesus interviewed in the parable of the talents, the one that said, I know you were a strict master and you would require that I save something, that I protected what you gave me. No, it's not about protection. It's about giving away, So you have to see it in yourself first, that you are valuable, you are worthy, that you have so much to give. So now we have come to a time where we all must decide whether we're willing to step out in faith and to make a more serious investment in a transformed, noble future. Are we willing to step out? Are we willing to do something, to try? You know, someone said before, what do you want on your tombstone? What do you want written? And so this is like an exercise people do, and everyone says, well, I want beloved of the Lord or something like that. So I thought, what do I want on my tombstone? What do I want they call it epitaph, to be written? And so what I would like is to say, at least he tried. At least he tried. So we've come to a point now where we have to decide, are we willing to try, to step out, to do something? You know, Einstein said, if you're hoping for change, you're hoping for something different, the definition of insanity is to do the same thing you're always doing or you've always been doing, to just keep on doing that. The definition of insanity is to keep doing the things you're doing and expect a different result. It doesn't work that way. You've got to change the things. We have got to try to change the things that we're doing and step out in faith, in investment, and make a serious decision. And hopefully for a more, what I call a more noble future. All right, are you in? Are you all in? Come on, somebody, let me know. All right, just finally, as we conclude the questions for our reflection, what changes? What changes do you need to make to become the hero, to show the value, to show our lives are to show? They're like little epistles, remember? Like little letters walking around. Our lives are meant to show so that others can read them. So what will they read? So what changes do you need to make to become the hero of your own story? What would the outcome be? And I'm reading from our lesson text up above this video, or to the right side. What would be the outcome? What would the outcome be for your life, or your group, or your loved ones, or your fellow relatives, relatives, or your friends? What would the outcome be? What does it look like? The law of the mirror. What do you see? What is possible? How does God see you? Try to see it that way. When was the last time you bet big on yourself? It's time to bet big, to try to bet big together. We can do it together. Bet big on yourself. And what were the results? So time for reflection. So write it down. You can write it in the comments below, or you can send it to me in Facebook Messenger. And questions for individual or group discussion at the very bottom. How is your self-image on a scale from 1 to 10? You can put a number. You can put a comment down below, and you can just put a number. You don't have to say anything. Just put a number. What is your self-image on a scale of 1 to 10? It's time for reflection, time for the mirror, the law of the mirror. How is your self-investment then? Are you investing? How is your self-investment on a scale from 1 to 10? Are you doing anything? Or are you doing a lot? Or are you beginning? Or are you in the middle? And last question, what's the difference between your self-image and your self-investment? That takes the first of these last 3 questions for discussion, the first 2, and compares them together. Your self-image on a scale of 1 to 10, your self-investment on a scale to 1 to 10, and then compare those 2 and think about it. Okay, let's do it. Let's get set, ready, get set, go, grow, and glow. See you next time as I figure out how to turn off the video. All right, see you next time. Bye.